Good morning, Chubsy Chasers! Welcome to the Sprocket and Chubs Outdoor Podcast. When you go turkey hunting, how detailed are your hunt plans? I'll be honest, I usually think about simple things like what snacks to bring, which calls to take, and my weapon of choice. I don't really put much more thought into it. In this episode, Sprocket sits down with new friend, new bow hunter, and new turkey hunter, Nick Bilageron, to discuss their loadout in preparation for their upcoming backcountry turkey hunt. Yes, you heard that right, a backcountry turkey hunt. They talk about everything from trekking poles to quilts to binocular harnesses and water filtration. This is a great episode, so grab a snack, settle in, and let's get after it. This week's episode is sponsored by Sawyer Products, who set the standard in water filtration. Sprocket and Chubs love the Sawyer squeeze filter as it is perfect for outdoor recreation like scouting, hunting, fishing, and camping. It's affordable, highly versatile, and is a great choice for your next adventure. The Sawyer squeeze is for those who need long-term reliability, and it carries a lifetime warranty. You can find a variety of products, including the Sawyer squeeze, at www.sawyer.com.
This is Sprocket, and I'm solo without my Chubsy this morning, recording here in Virginia Beach from my living room with a new friend of mine. It's a developing friendship, and I finally refer to him as East Coast Nick. I call this Nick East Coast Nick because one of my best friends, dating back from junior high, is Nick Jandrew out in Washougal. And when I'm talking to my wife or my mom and dad or other family members or friends that know both Nicks, they'll often ask me, well, which Nick are you talking about? And on a recent trip home, I just said, well, it's East Coast Nick. And it stuck. So I'm going into my third week now referring to Nick here in Virginia Beach as East Coast Nick. So Nick, why don't you say hello to everybody, and we'll get into this podcast adventure that we have planned.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on, Aaron. Excited to talk through it. So me and Aaron are planning a little trip here in the next couple months. Backcountry turkey hunting. It'll be my first turkey trip. I spend a lot of times out in the woods where we plan on going, camping out of the RV, glamping as you may call it, but I've also done a lot of camping off the dirt bikes. So have some experience with that. Haven't backcountryed in probably 15, 20 years. So that'll be pretty much a new experience again for me. So excited to get into it, see what we gotta go through.
This is going to be so much fun. So when Nick talks about an upcoming trip and he talks about turkey hunting and backcountry, what does that mean? What is the basis of this particular podcast? We're going after turkeys backcountry style. And this is going to be a multi-event project for us this spring. This morning, we're going over our backcountry loadouts. 2 weeks from now, we're packing into the area for a two-nighter and we're scouting. And then we're returning in mid-April, right about opening weekend for Virginia. And we're going to be in the area for 3 nights. It's a massive wilderness area. In this process, we're hanging 6 cameras, a whole bunch of waypoint locations I've identified on several different mapping platforms. And then we're going to go back in the fall. We're going to hunt whitetail and potentially black bear. So this is a multifaceted process and adventure that we're putting together, and we're super excited to talk to all of the listeners about it. What would I like from our listeners out there on all the different platforms? If you have backcountry experience and you listen to this podcast, please send in some emails on any recommendations or ideas that you have that might differ from what East Coast Nick and I talk about today. If you're new to the backcountry world and or you're interested in your first trip, by all means, email us or contact Sprocket and Chubs. Chubs also has backcountry experience. Again, he's just not with us this morning. Email us and we will answer any questions that we potentially can. If not, we will send you in the direction of some folks that we know that will be able to provide you with solid information on the topic. We'll jump into this. We're going to talk about backcountry gear in general. I backcountry hunt for elk. I've been doing this since the mid 90s, before it was cool and before the gear was really lightweight and cool. My first backcountry trip was with military grade equipment, an old Alice pack with MREs, a liquid fuel stove, and I transitioned to a Dwight shoe composite frame and fleece pack system. That pack was hugely popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. Dwight Shoe was a phenomenal archer, backcountry hunter in the Pacific Northwest. Very, very skilled with the recurve. He was one of my idols. Now I've progressed and upgraded all of my gear to a lot of higher end stuff, lightweight stuff, breathable stuff. But that doesn't mean that you have to have the top of the line equipment to get a backcountry adventure in the books. And some of the equipment that I have and that I use, it varies from what East Coast Nick is using. And we'll talk about some of those differences. So Nick, where do you want to start?
I don't even know. There's so much laid out in front of us right now. I know last weekend I was laying in bed one of those nights I couldn't sleep. So I just, the trip was on my mind. So I went on my phone, started a little list, and just started listing out everything I need or think we're going to need for this trip. And we talked about that a little bit, and you gave me some insight on that past Wednesday. Well, it's just a long list that you actually need to fit on your back and then keep it light enough to be comfortable. We're probably looking in the double digits just for Saturday walking around when we're out there. So it's going to be could be a long trek.
So let's talk about lists. I'm really glad that you brought that up because it hadn't even crossed my mind to talk about that today. And it's definitely a topic that should have been on my list, pun intended. When you are preparing for a backcountry event, especially if it's going to be for multiple days and you're new to the sport, there's a phrase out there. I think it gets overused and or abused, but it has great value in it. And that is ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain. I'm not an extremist. I like to be in the middle ground in almost everything that I do. And I've found in backcountry adventures, if you try to go too lightweight and too minimal, you're losing some of your creature comforts that might make the trip a little bit more enjoyable. And I've been on the other end of the scale where I've had old antiquated equipment. I've hauled in far too much stuff. My pack was way too heavy and I was miserable hauling that thing around the entire time. So now I kind of try to fall into the middle, Nick, where I try to have a reasonable load that I can carry comfortably, but also maintain some of those creature comforts that just make me happy during the day or while I'm in camp, spending time in the evening or sitting on the side of a hill, or if it's raining or cold, I want to be comfortable. So I think there's some good middle ground there. For me, a list provides all the equipment that you need and that you want. So when you put it all together, the day or 2 days or 3 days before your trip, you don't forget anything. That's a big one. You can track some of your weight that way. And some guys really nerd out on that. They weigh everything and they want to know down to the ounce what every single piece of gear weighs. I really don't get into it that deep. I weigh most of my big stuff. I'll put it on my list, but then I put my pack together with all of my food, water, all my gear, and then I weigh that pack. And then I look at that weight and I ask myself, is that what I want to carry for the next, like our first trip coming up is 2 nights. Do I want, and we're covering a lot of country in a 48-hour period. And I ask myself, for a 48-hour period, do I want to carry that much weight? What can I live without on this trip? Knowing that I have extra weight in my pack. So we're each carrying 3 game cameras. I know that by the end of the full Saturday, that weight will be gone. But we're talking about maybe 1.5 pounds of weight of camera loss. Then also food will be diminishing. And throughout the day, my water weight will be reduced because I'll be drinking water throughout the day. But I asked myself, do I need a backup headlamp? How many batteries do I need? How much food do I really need to take on this trip? And I start looking at some of the things that I can strip out of my pack to reduce that in total weight. So the list, when you just brought up the topic of the list, that can be a very valuable tool in your planning process before you actually step away from the trailhead. With lists off the table, looking at all the gear that's laying on the floor in front of us, what is it that you want to talk about first? Should we start out with, hey, what's it going to look like stepping away from the truck?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at the 2 packs. You got more of your lightweight setup, and you got the MRK 6 here for your bigger backcountry excursions. Where I am right now, I wanted to pick 1 pack that I could use in multiple different uses. So I ended up with the MRK 3 this year for when I was going back doing the whitetail saddle hunting. It was small enough for that, but I thought it would still give me the ability to pack out for these bigger trips. I think we're on both of our minds back at the beginning of that deer season. And through the last couple of weeks going through, we've done some trial fits, and it seems to work pretty well for me. So we can start the packs. They're definitely different in their style, but I think they both have a good ability, and then just work through how we're going to load them up.
Sounds great. So our packs, I'm a huge Badlands fan. In my interaction with Nick, I steered him in the direction of Badlands. We're not going to dig into the company too much right now. What is the difference between the MRK3 and the MRK6, and what are the similarities between the 2 packs? Both packs are in the Badlands approach pattern. They both have the same Strata suspension system, which is incredibly comfortable.
It is so comfortable. It's fantastic.
And very tailorable to the user, as in fitting and size. And when we talk about comfort, I've had over 80 pounds in my Mark 6. It carries the load effortlessly and very comfortably on my body. I can pack it around literally all day long. My legs obviously get tired, but my shoulders and my lower back, they just don't feel the strain from some of the other pack systems that I've used in the past. The Mark 6 is the largest of the MRK series in Badlands line right now. It's just over 6,000 cubic inches. The Mark III is their mid-level pack. So they have a Mark II, they have a Mark III, and they have a Mark VI right now. And the Mark III is just over 3,000 cubic inches, but it has a design from the past. Badlands in their early days had a 3000 series pack that has a tubular wing design with a center beaver tail, and then you can load equipment and bags in the center of it and strap it all down. And that's what the MRK3 is right now. So when Nick talks about us going through his pack and moving things around and shifting things around, we've been playing with what he loads where, what fits in the different tubular compartments, what he's going to pack in underneath the beaver tail, and then spread loading the weight evenly so it's a comfortable carry.
Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting pack. I was split between the Mark II and the Mark III when I was looking at them. I leaned towards the Mark III, one, because the 2 only having around 2,000 cubic inches, I didn't feel it would be enough really to load up and do a backcountry hunt. You can still fit stuff in front of the packs pop off the frame, but the Mark III lets you kind of load it a lot closer to your body, and I thought that would be convenient. And also, when I'm loading up a pack, when I'm going back in the woods, I want everything to be in its place and everything to have a place. The Mark II for me just didn't have enough compartments, I guess.
It's not very compartmentalized.
And then the Mark III, I'm still finding little pockets on the Mark III. They have little pockets everywhere, which I'm loving because I can put everything in its pocket. When I'm 20 feet up in a tree, I don't need to think about where something is or, go digging through my pack. It's got its spot. I can open up that zipper or that pouch and it is right there. And that is so nice for me.
The Mark II would work great for an overnight pack bag, especially if you're not hunting big game. If you were going in, you could make it work. Nick, you brought up a great point. The MRK series have the ability, the bags pull away from the frame, so it has an integrated meat shelf in it. And if you were using the Mark II as a backcountry bag, just to go for a backcountry overnight hike, or even a 2-night hike, and or this turkey hunt, you could easily get a dry bag and put gear in your dry bag, pull the pack off the frame, and carry that dry bag just like a meat bag. And so it would work. I think the Mark III was a better choice.
Yeah, I think it's going to work well for me all around for the different trips I do right now.
Yep, I do too. So stepping away from the truck, you have your pack on. Trekking poles. Really, really recommends that you use trekking poles if you're not currently using them, whether you're hiking, backpacking, doing a backcountry hunt. Trekking poles provide so much added stability, and they save so much energy by the end of the day. On my Limitless Outdoors website, I wrote a blog or gear review on trekking poles, and I currently use Peak Sissy Sticks. They're incredible trekking poles. They're a high-end trekking pole. I put them through serious abuse last September on a Southeast Idaho backcountry elk hunt, and they performed extremely well. I used to scoff at folks that use trekking poles. I did call them sissy sticks or sissy poles. I thought I don't need them. And then the first time that I used them, I don't want to leave the trailhead without them. So I strongly recommend trekking poles. Optics. I carry optics with me pretty much all the time. Nick has picked up on this over the last year. I have optics in my vehicle. I have optics when I'm going on a day hike or just a walk through the park with my dog. I like to carry my optics. When I'm tree saddle hunting, I climb and hunt with optics. When I'm scouting, I have optics. When I'm doing a backcountry hunt, be it archery, rifle, muzzleloader. And I have found in the past that if those optics are not hanging in front of me on my chest, I do not use them as much as I should. So I like to keep my optics on my chest. They're basically in my face the entire time I'm out in the field. And again, I use them all the time. So I will have an optic case on my body when we leave the truck or the trailhead. Pick your brand. Again, I'm a Badlands guy, but it doesn't matter what brand you go with as long as it holds your glass. I recommend that you find one that holds your rangefinder as well, or has attachable side pockets so that you can have your binoculars and your rangefinder right there, accessible immediately. I like a binocular case or chest harness that has additional small pockets so you can put your windicator can go in there. An extra diaphragm call or two could go in there. You could put a scent squeeze in there. Glass cleaner can go in there. But I strongly recommend that you use some type of a optics chest harness. Nick, from there, we can get into the stuff that we're going to have in camp.
Yeah, so I'm coming from a little different background, I think, than you are when it comes to some of the gear. So where my gear was purchased for is my family, we are big into adventure riding on dirt bikes. And we go up to the George Washington, and we've done several trips, a week or longer, where everything had to fit on the bike. So there's definitely some size restriction. Weight is a concern to some degree, but it's definitely not, I think, as critical as backcountry. I definitely think a lot of the gear that I'm bringing is from what I got for those. It's definitely going to work. So starting, I guess, just start with the tent. I'm working with a Eureka 2-person tent. It's worked well for me and my wife on the backcountry or on our dirt bike trips. It's going to give me more than enough room when we're out here, and it's still not that heavy. I'm packing that. I got, don't ask me the name of it, but our sleeping pad to get down on. And then both of us this year looked into going with a quilt instead of going with a sleeping bag. I've always been a sleeping bag person. I'm a tosser and a turner, and I've always got tangled up in the sleeping bag. So looking at the quilt stuff, I think me and you both were digging into a lot. That was one of the things that I saw that I liked, is you can toss and turn. You're underneath the quilt versus in it. So it gives you a little more freedom to roll over and turn around. So I'm excited to see how that works. And we both reached out to Hammock Gear and got those quilts from them, and very light, pack up nice and small, and they feel incredibly warm. So I'm excited to give that a good try when we're out there.
So for my tent, I'm a big Agnes fan. I've looked into flies. I've looked into ultralight tents. I've packed out of one-person tents. I've packed out of hammocks. I purchased a big Agnes copper spur with their hotel vestibule in 2020. So far, it's been my favorite tent I've ever used. Big Agnes, their warranty is great. It's just a solid tent that is so easy to pop up and put together. Everything's color coded. It's simple. It's fast. I've had it on like 7 to 8 day pack trips where it's rained every single day. All of my tent never leaked inside. I never had water inside my tent. It's great. I carry the few extra ounces on the hotel vestibule. Again, I started out talking about I'll sacrifice some weight addition for some comfort addition. And the hotel vestibule gives me a little bit of extra space in between the fly of my tent and the actual elements. And it gives me a place to put my gear as well. I always prefer a 2-person tent because it gives you that little bit of extra room to move around inside your tent. If you're using a standard 2-person tent that doesn't have an enlarged vestibule, you can put your gear inside the tent. With me having a 2-person tent in that hotel vestibule, I can get the majority of my gear out of the elements inside the hotel. And then I have just a little bit of added room inside the tent. And I'll say as an amputee, it benefits me as well, because having to take my leg on and off and do all of that inside my tent, having that little bit of extra room is a huge, huge help for me. And then for the quilts, I've ran a lot of different type of sleep systems, from military grade stuff to REI stuff to brands that I've purchased off of Moose Jaw. And I've been looking at quilts now since 2019, and I just was reluctant to pull the trigger. My backcountry hunt last September with HP, he had a quilt, and I fell in love with it. They're super lightweight. They're super warm. We did some additional research, and Hammock Gear, they're an American-based company right out here in the East. And they cater towards hammock backpackers, but they came highly recommended. They're not the most expensive quilt on the market, but they're super lightweight and super warm. And for my first quilt, I thought it was a really good price point to start out with.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I was in sleeping bags before this trip. Take away the tent, call it a Walmart guy. Most of my gear was Walmart gear, and it definitely worked. I'm definitely excited to step up on some of that gear a little bit for this trip, and definitely excited to try out that quilt. As much as I don't want a freezing cold trip, it would be kind of nice to have a colder night and see how they perform in that cold weather. The coldest bag I had before this trip was a 40-degree bag that I still own. Definitely had to get something a little chillier for a March trip up in the mountains here on the East Coast. We could definitely still get some cold weather. So we got the 10-degree quilts. That should be more than warm enough, I think, for us up there. So we're going to make it work.
Case in point for all the listeners, when I went to Idaho last September, I had an REI mummy bag. It was a 40-degree bag. I had a merino wool insert to give myself a few more degrees of comfort. That 40-degree REI bag and insert weighs more than my 10-degree quilt, and I can fit them both in the same dry bag. I'm gaining 30 degrees of warmth with less weight. It's a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
Sleeping pads are very personal, in my opinion. I have used military grade foam pads. I've used multiple different Thermarest pads, dating all the way back to like the late 90s, early 2000s. I have used Climates, and I am now using a Big Agnes. For me, at 50 years old and having a lot of metal in my body, I went with the Big Agnes pad that I have because it's a thicker pad. So again, I'm carrying a little more weight in my sleeping pad, but it's providing me a little bit more comfort when I'm sleeping at night, which is huge for me. I know there's folks out there that want to go as light as possible, and I had a Climate ultralight pad. It was super warm. It's a great product. I would strongly recommend them. But for me, at my age and my comfort level, I wanted something a little bit thicker.
Yeah, I went, I think when we were shopping pads a few years ago, we were looking at the closeout rack at REI, and that's where we picked ours up. And I think mine's 3 inches thick. It's a 3.5R, so it should be warm enough for back there. Worst case, if we get a little chilly, I can always throw on a base layer when I'm in the tent, and that should keep me plenty warm. And it's always been a comfortable pad for me. The 3 inches is, I think, more than enough in most cases out there. As long as you're not sleeping on, a riverbed of gravel, I think you'll be comfortable with a 3-inch pad.
So speaking of sleeping on 3 inches of gravel, there are some pads on the market that are dual chambered pads, and they're a higher end pad. But here's the benefit to that: if you puncture one level of that chamber, you still have a second chamber system that you can sleep on, versus our sleeping pads are single chamber pads. So if you puncture it and you don't take some type of a puncture kit with you, then you're now sleeping on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
There are some pads out there that are 2-chamber pads, and it's definitely something that folks should look into. Wow. What else do we look at? How do I carry my sleeping bag? I carry my bag in a dry bag. I don't have a dry bag that's a compression bag by design. I use the seal of the dry bag. I will roll my pad inside the dry bag. I stuff my sleeping system inside of that, and then I crush all the air out of the dry bag as I'm sealing up the dry bag. It's not a vacuum, but it's like pushing all the air out of a Ziploc bag before you put something in the freezer. And I'm able to it's an 8-liter Sea to Summit dry bag, Silpat dry bag, super lightweight. I will have a fresh sock. Again, I only need one sock, but I have a dry wool sock in there. I recommend most people carry 2. I will have my puffy jacket and my puffy pants shoved in there as well. That way, all of my warmy stuff is dry all the time. And if the temperature bottoms out and I'm wet, if it's been raining all day and I'm soaking wet, I can pop up my shelter. I can get into that dry space. I can get my wet stuff off. And when I pull my sleeping system out, I have warm, dry stuff to put on, and I can get inside that quilt. That's how I run my stuff.
Yeah, we've always used, for all of our trips, we found some bags off of Amazon. They're fairly cheap. I think they're about $14 for 3 different bags of different various sizes. They've always worked well with us. I'm not going to submerge it in a river. Quite trusted that much, but one of our trips, it rained for 5 days straight. It did not stop. And I always had a dry bag to climb into at the end of the day. So it's worked well enough for us. So I'm going to do similar thing. I'm going to follow your lead with that as a puffy jacket. And I'm going to have the pair of socks with me, and I'm going to make sure those are stuffed into a dry bag as well, just to make sure they stay dry. I was able, for my whole camp setup, we were able just to shove into one bag with me, which worked out well. So we have the tent rolled up inside of my sleeping pad, and then on top of the Eureka bag, there was actually enough room for me to manhandle the quilt on top of it. And that's worked out great because it just sits on one side of that inner section of the Mark III. And I have that whole camp set up kind of in one pack there. And I'm just going to throw that whole thing in a dry bag, or, if it comes to it and I can't find one big enough, I'll just put it in a good trash bag because it'll still keep it dry.
That's a great idea. Great idea, Nick. And for the inside of my pack, I usually put some type of a heavy contractor bag. I line my pack with that heavy contractor bag.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move forward to hydration.
Yeah.
Because that's key. We could go on a 3-day trip without food. We'll survive. You go 3 days without water and you're potentially going to perish or succumb to some other type of medical emergency. So I have used a lot of different water filtration and or I'm going to say water purifying methods
Mhm.
throughout my life. And my favorite is Sawyer products. And oddly enough, this episode is sponsored by Sawyer. So with that said, in the near future, at some point during this Backcountry Turkey series, we will be giving away a Sawyer Screes water filter, compliments of Sawyer. Thank you very much, Sawyer, for donating to the Sprocket and Chubbs podcast and putting a quality product in the hands of whoever the recipient's going to end up being. At some point in time, the details for that giveaway will populate through Sprocket and Chubbs, and you will have an opportunity to win that Sawyer Squeeze. I've used tablets. I have used pump filters. I have used straight bleach. There was a period of time back in the late 90s where I would take an eyedropper, just straight bleach. I would fill up my container and put 2 or 3 drops of straight bleach into my container and shake it up, and I would drink it. And does it work? It did. I never had any health issues from bad water. Is it safe and healthy to drink straight bleach? Not so much. So I wouldn't recommend, when I share that story, I'm not recommending that somebody carries a dripper of bleach in their pack for water purification. There's so many other better and more modern methods than that. But again, so the Sawyer filter, I love it because it's small, it's lightweight, it's compact. And unless you're drawing straight, like filthy, muddy, nasty water, the Sawyer water filter lasts for a long, long time. I've had mine now. I purchased mine in 2020. I'm still using the same Sawyer Squeeze from 2020. So mine's 3 years old and it works great.
Yeah, so the dirt biking trips that we did, we were, say, blessed enough or lazy enough where when we stopped for lunch in the middle of the day, we would load up a couple big bottles of water and we would have those for the next 24 hours and repeat. But I've used the tablets before, and I would always bring a bottle of the tablets with me on those dirt bike trips. And I had to use them once where we just ran out of water one night. We had a puncture of one of the bottles on the way back, and we were a little thirsty that night, and the tablets worked. Does it taste the best? Not really, but it works. And honestly, the water up there in that backcountry, those springs are fairly clean anyway. I'm not going to say I've never had a sip of the water and I've been okay. I'm not going to recommend it, especially if you have the ability to filter it. But where we're going, I'm not incredibly concerned about the water. So we're looking, hopefully find a spring head near where we pitch camp. So that would be good for us. And the Sawyer is just another level of comfort on top of that, making sure we're not trying to run to a tree in the middle of the night.
I may carry some tablets just in case, my Sawyer Squeeze finally says, hey, I've served you well, my time's up. And it will at least have some tablets in the pack that we can purify water. I think it's a good backup. But Sawyer Squeeze, folks, it's of all the water purification systems that I've used, it's my favorite. Bladders. I carry multiple bladders with me when I'm in the backcountry. I carry a bladder of water with me if I'm doing a 4-hour hunt in a saddle, or a morning hunt for turkey from the truck, or again, if it's a multi-day event, I have a bladder system in my pack. That's what I prefer. Nalgene bottles have become very, very popular with backpackers and backcountry hunters. I prefer hydration. I will say having my water source readily available right in front of me is equally as important as having my optics on my chest right in front of me. I have used the Nalgene process before, or Nalgene method. I don't hydrate as much because I have that water tube in front of my face all day long, and I'm more apt to grab it and take a drink than I am to reach back and grab a Nalgene that's hiding out of my view, and or waiting until we stop and maybe taking the pack off, or I'll stand there and watch whoever my partner is. If I'm with somebody, if they go to take a drink, then it spurs my memory to reach around and grab my Nalgene. But I like having the Camelback style system. And I also like it because it doesn't slosh. If you load your water correctly, your bladder bag inside your pack will not make any noise at all. Where when you're carrying a Nalgene bottle in an exterior pouch, you can hear that water sloshing, and it drives me absolutely insane.
Yeah, I'll be running a Camelback bladder in the bag as well, and then I'll be loading up with a couple extra water pouches when we go out there. Make sure we have the water in case we don't hit that water source. Those streams aren't always producing out in the back there. Hopefully we'll find a good source in the April trip. We won't be as concerned about water, and we'll be able to pack in a little bit lighter and then refill out in the backcountry, which would be much more convenient.
I carry multiple different bladder bags with me for a hydration source. I have my bags labeled for dirty water. So I use a black Sharpie and I put a large D on certain bags so that I know if I'm not filtering straight out of a water source into a clean bag, I can preload certain bags with dirty water and put them in the pack. And then when I get to camp or to wherever I'm going to set camp, as I'm using my drinkable water, I can grab my bags of dirty water and filter it into a clean bladder. And then I also know I never have significant contaminants inside my clean drinking bladders because they're labeled. I have my dirty bladders and then I have my clean drinking bladders. I have a clean bladder that's 4 liters. So I have 1 liter, 2 liter, and 4 liter size bags that I will carry depending upon the trip and what kind of water sources I think that I need to carry around. And that's something for the listeners to think about, especially if you're new to backcountry. Sometimes on a map, you think you have a water source, and when you get there, it's dry.
Yeah, we've run into several instances. So when we go, bring the camper back there, we're boondocking. We're not at a campsite, a formal campsite. We're 10 to 15 miles back into the George Washington at they have kind of campsites built off the fire roads. And we like to set up next to a river. I put a nice filtration system in the camper. So we just refill from the river when we need more fresh water, which works great if there's water in the river. And we had this conversation the other night. You're like, this stream it's normally a good stream back there from just the research online. And we went up there this past fall onto North River, and which is normally 1-2 foot deep, a nice, clear, clean flowing water. And it was bone dry. We ended up getting a big rainstorm that night. I think it was actually one of the hurricanes that came through, which is always fun camping in a hurricane. Granted, it wasn't too bad up there, but then we had a wall of almost 3 feet of water come down the river that night. But this past year has been really dry in the George Washington, and all those major rivers, unless you found a deep pocket, there was nothing in them.
That's why I load heavy leaving the trailhead initially, so that I know that I have enough water to get me to a couple of locations to try to find a water source once I'm away from the vehicle. You can survive 24 hours or so. You're going to be okay. However, I like food, and I like hot chicken broth, and I like coffee, and all 3 of those things require water. If you only pack in 2 liters of water when you leave the trailhead and you get to your water source and it's dry, and maybe that's the end of the road for you for that day, if that 2 liters of water, depending on how much you consumed on the trek in, you may only have enough to cook your meal and some coffee the following morning, and you're done.
Yeah, I would sacrifice the meal for the coffee personally. There's priorities in the morning for me, and that would be coffee. But you definitely want to be careful with the water. Make sure you got what you need and be smart about it. If you get to what's supposed to be your water source and it's not there, you might need to make some decisions on what you're going to do next, and may not be staying out that whole weekend. You got to be smart about it.
Yes, you do. Yep. We talked about food, coffee, and chicken broth. So let's transition now into our cooking utensils and some of our. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into backcountry nutrition. That could be an episode in itself. Huge fan of jet boils.
I run the same thing. I've used jet boils for 7-8 years now. They work great. You can get smaller camping systems, but I like the fact it's completely compact. Everything will fit inside of it. They even sell a coffee press that works in the jet boil mug, which I drink generally better, nicer coffee when I'm out camping than I do at home, which is kind of ironic, because I'll do a nice French press out in the backcountry. But I love the system. It's quick, it's compact, it's in the big picture pretty dang light, and you can pack everything directly into the cup, fuel and all, and it's a compact system that works great.
Yeah, jet boils are fantastic. I've used several different types of stoves throughout my wilderness and military adventures. Jet boil is my favorite, and it's one of the most popular. Food wise, Peak Refuel. Right now, it's currently my favorite backcountry meal. And then Heather's Choice is a close second. I love Top Ramen in the backcountry. That's my midday luxury. That's just what I like. Coffee. So I usually do not take a different coffee cup when I'm packing in. I basically boil water in my jet boil container, but I will cook my Top Ramen straight in my jet boil container, and then I'll cook my coffee directly in it as well. But on this trip, I might take an old favorite tin cup of mine. There's three coffees that I'm enjoying in the backcountry right now. Two of them I've had experience with. One of them is brand new to me. So I'm a huge Black Rifle fan. And Black Rifle has their coffee sticks. It's a dehydrated coffee. They're super easy. You boil water, tear the package open, you dump it in, and you drink it. And it's for dehydrated coffee. It's very high quality. They also Black Rifle makes a coffee seat bag. So it looks like a large tea bag, but it's full of coffee. You throw that in the bottom of your cup, you pour the hot water over it, you let it seep for a few minutes, and then you drink it. I was playing around on the Wilderness Athlete website. They promote Dark Timber. Dark Timber has a disposable, like self-contained disposable pour over coffee. And I ordered some of it just to check it out. And I had my first one the other night. Holy cow, is that stuff good?
Yeah, for a quick disposable cup of coffee. I actually sent you a picture this morning because you were giving me crap because I hadn't tried it yet because you threw me a pouch on Wednesday. I made it this morning, and it is a good cup of coffee at home or in the backcountry, and I'm excited to have some of those in the morning.
You know, we're mid-morning now, Nick, and we both have had coffee this morning, and we've had a really good Bloody Mary apiece. I would almost be tempted, now that we're talking about it, to go boil some water and pour us a couple of those Dark Timber pour overs just to finish up this podcast. What do you think?
You would not hurt my feelings with that at all.
Well, why don't we take a quick break for our listeners? We're gonna go boil some water and drum up some of this Dark Timber pour over, and then we'll get right back into the backcountry content. So we'll chat with you in just a minute.
Enjoy your hunt even more by taking the time to protect yourself from insects. You know the ones: chiggers, mosquitoes, or those nasty Lyme disease carrying ticks. Sawyer Products produces permethrin, an odorless insect repellent specifically for your clothing. It repels insects of all kinds and is super easy to apply. Spray it on, let it dry, and go hunting. It is truly that simple. You can find a variety of products, including permethrin, at www.sawyer.com.
All right, well, we're back. Nick, cheers to a hot cup of joe.
Thank you, sir.
So in true backcountry fashion, we broke out the Sawyer Squeeze. I haven't used it since last September, so she's all dried out. So we did the back squeeze process and got her all lubed up with some high quality H2O. Did some water filtering, boiled some water, and we're enjoying our cups of Dark Timber backpackable disposable pour overs.
And it's a good cup of joe.
It's good, man. It's cheers to good things to come.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back into the groove. Let's talk about bear bags, especially if you're a backcountry guy or girl, gal, whatever pronoun you want to use these days. If you're in solid backcountry, there's a good chance there are critters around that will be interested in your food, which might lead into an interest into you. If you're not familiar with the term, it is a bag that you put your food into, and then you hoist it up over a tree limb away from wherever your camp is. So if it draws in a critter, it's drawing them away from your actual campsite. It provides a level of safety. I just use a game bag because typically if I'm backcountry, I'm doing some type of big game hunting. So I just use one of my game bags, and I always carry some type of line with me. It's usually paracord. Like I said, I just stuff all my food into it. All of my garbage goes into that game bag, and it's hanging over a limb, probably 40, 50 yards away from main camp. And that's just what I do. Some people carry actual dry bags. Some people like to carry like a heavy duty trash bag. I try to multi-purpose some things. So if I'm just straight backpacking, then I would use one of my dry bags.
I'm guilty of it. We haven't generally done that. I just generally put the food away from camp, but I have done the trash bag thing before. It works. Put the trash in there and throw a rope over a tree and pull it up. And trash bags are light. They're small to pack. They're not going to add a whole lot to your pack, and they can work for several purposes. I mean, dry bag, if you lose a dry bag, they'll work for a dry bag. If you need a poncho, it'll still work for you. So
that's correct. All right, so what else do we have down here that we need to look at? Another comfort item. Let's talk about chairs or seats. Majority of my backcountry, I take a foldable eggshell seat. Mine that I carry, I believe, is a Thermarest. They're very inexpensive. And again, I have a lot of time on mine. I've had it since 2020. And it keeps on chugging along. I bought it off of Amazon, very inexpensive, super lightweight, and it straps to the bottom of my pack. For this trip, because we're turkey hunting and we will spend ample amount of time sitting on the ground, either in bushes, behind logs, or up against a tree trunk. On a turkey vest, you have that really plush, nice padded seat to put underneath your sit-upon. Well, on a backcountry trip, I am not packing in my turkey vest. I'm just going to carry once we set camp, I'll empty my pack except for my required turkey equipment. And I won't have that padded seat with me, so my Badlands turkey vest, I can pull the pad completely off of my vest, and I could potentially take that. But I'm taking a collapsible foldable chair, which Nick, I know you're bringing one as well. Yours is a different brand of mine, and you just grabbed yours. So I think you want to talk about yours. I'll just be brief on mine. Mine is made by Helinox. Again, it's an ultra lightweight, fairly spendy, packable backpacking chair, but it's super comfortable to sit in. If I don't decide to just strap that pad from my turkey vest onto my pack and haul it in, I do plan on packing in this little foldable chair that I have. And then, because then the other thing too is, in Virginia, which is a lot of eastern states, in the first 4.5 to 5 weeks of season, you can only hunt till noon. Mm-hmm. So we do plan on executing a lot of deer scouting while we're in the woods turkey hunting. But if we do end up back in camp for extended periods of time, I don't want to just either be laying on my sleeping pad or sitting on this little tiny eggshell Thermarest pad that I have. I'm thinking I may as well have the comfort of an actual chair. So I'm going to pack in this Helinox ground chair. But why don't you tell us about the one that you have?
Yeah, so going more on the budget friendly side for the camp chair, we just went on Amazon, and I think when we got these, they're about $15, and you can probably find 5 or 6 of them that are the exact same thing, just with a different label. Ours is an FB Sport, but it packs down to the size of probably a large thermos, and it's one of those quick unfold it with some aluminum poles. There have elastic cords in the middle so they don't fall on the ground. It pops together, and within 15 seconds you got a pretty comfortable seat that works well. We've had them for years. They've never broke on us. They've lasted, and they're light, and so that's what I'll be working with back there.
So comparing the two, my Helinox packs up into a little stuff sack. It's about the size of a 1 liter Nalgene bottle. Nick's is a little bit longer, but they're almost about the same volume, just slightly different shape. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact that I probably paid quite a bit more for the Helinox, but that's probably because it's half the weight of yours.
Do you have a cup holder though?
Yeah, it's called my right hand. It's built in. Again, you're talking about, can you obtain or use backcountry equipment on a tighter budget compared to purchasing ultra lightweight high-end stuff? absolutely can. The stuff is out there.
Yep.
It just might equate to one pack might weigh 5 to 10 pounds more than the other. And then again, you're asking yourself, do I want to do this on a budget and carry more weight or not be as comfortable, or spend a whole lot more money to carry less weight and maybe be a smidge more comfortable? So it really is your priorities and what's important to you. However, what I will say from a turkey hunter's aspect, and it's something we're going to do once we stop recording today, we're going to take a look at your little chair, because noise will kill a turkey hunt. And when I say kill a turkey hunt, as in kill your hunt and not kill a turkey. I have wrapped my collapsible chair in camouflage cloth tape to help reduce that metal on metal contact and soften the noise, lower that decibel. So we need to take a look at your camp chair and potentially do the same thing.
Yeah, I as soon as you brought it up, you're going to be right, and we're going to be wrapping it, because it works great at camp. But trying to set it up quietly when there's a bird 100, 200 yards away, it's not going to happen with how they currently are. But I got some of that camo cloth tape at home, and we can definitely wrap the legs up, and that will dent in that noise significantly. In worst case, I'll leave it at camp and I'll bring a little pad. I'm not going to be the first time I sat on the ground, won't be the last time I sat on the ground. So
right on, our heads in the same place. So let's talk about headlamps now. Again, headlamps, there are so many, and I have used so many. Huge personal preference on headlamps. I own battery powered and rechargeable headlamps both. I have used both in the military and in outdoor adventures. I personally prefer battery powered headlamps because I can carry a spare set of batteries with me, but I only have so much extra power that I carry in power packs while I'm in the backcountry. And that power is usually reserved for my Garmin and my phone and cameras. And I would rather carry an extra set of AA batteries for my headlamp than rely on my power source to recharge my headlamp. That's my personal opinion. If I'm doing day hunts from the truck, then I use my rechargeable headlamp. The headlamp of choice for me in the backcountry is the Outdoor Pro Gear. Nick, I know you have the same one.
Yep.
It's what is it? It's like 1,000 lumen.
it's super bright.
It's insane. It runs off of 3 AA batteries. It utilizes a prism that you can go from a wide like camp beam to a spotlight. And when I say this thing is a spotlight, when you have fresh Energizer lithium batteries, and that's my battery of choice, listeners, use whatever battery that you want. If somebody out there thinks they know of a better battery than the Energizer lithiums, please send us an email or drop a comment on our podcast, because I'd like to know about it and test it. But right, for my experience, the Energizer lithiums are, this is my battery of choice. These headlamps, they run for 8 hours on high beam with the 3 Energizer lithiums. That's on high beam, and there's 3 different settings. Yeah. And when you put that thing in spotlight mode, holy smokes.
Yeah, 100, 200 yards easy, and you're still seeing what's out there clearly. And he said, I run the same headlamp, and honestly, low beam is more than enough in almost every situation. I use that same set of batteries for every hike in and hike out my entire deer season this year, and it's still going strong without a problem. So the batteries last, the light works. Is it the most compact light in the world? No, but does it work phenomenal for what it is? I think it does. I'm very happy with it.
And it's, what are they? I think they're $24.99, $29.99.
Yeah. Completely budget friendly for a light that works fantastic.
Absolutely. And so I've had that since 2019. I use it for hunting. I use it for cycling. I use it for running marathon and ultra marathons. It is so bright that when my wife is running with me at night, she has to tell me to stop swiveling back and forth through the neighborhood, because it's like penetrating into people's houses when it's dark out.
It'll light up your living room.
Absolutely. It freaks my wife out when we're running under darkness and I turn my head and shove the spotlight through somebody's front window. She's like, keep your eyes on the road. They work great. And waterproof, I forget what rating it is. It tells you on the Outdoor Pro Gear website, but they talk about like a continuous spray from a hose from every single direction from an unbeknownst amount of time. So are you going to dunk your head into a creek to look for an item that you dropped in 4 feet of water? Absolutely not. Last September in Idaho, where it rained on us for 7 days straight, never had any issues with it. Little quick tip for the listeners. I know there's some folks out there that say, well, I like to use a rechargeable because I don't have to worry about having, my headlamp come on inadvertently. We'll call it an ND, a negligent discharge of my headlamp, and my batteries are dead. That can still happen with a rechargeable headlamp. And with a battery powered headlamp, pop your battery pack open, reverse one of your batteries, and then put the lid back on. Now you don't have to worry about your headlamp accidentally coming on. You don't have to worry about pulling batteries out of it and have them in another pocket or losing them, because you don't want your headlamp to come on while it's in a pack. Your batteries are self-contained inside the battery compartment. It's not going to cause any shorts or any corroding. It will not corrode.
It's that green nasty stuff that'll damage any piece of electronics.
A good patina.
Yeah.
It will not cause any patina inside your headlamp. So yeah, just flip a battery around and it won't turn off. And then when you need it, even if it's pitch blackout, you know right where your batteries are, and you just have to flip one around and she's working again. So that's our headlamp of choice. For a Garmin, I use a Garmin InReach. I absolutely love it. Use your compass or directional tool of choice, but don't ever go into the backcountry without the means of knowing what direction you're going and how to get out safely, or you're going to become a statistic.
Yeah, it is amazing how easily you can get turned around. It happened to me this year. I was actually hiking out to the same tree that I had hunted 4 times before this year over, a 2-month period. I got to the top of the hill, had to hit the head. So I took care of my business, got turned around during it. And I stood there for 30 minutes, not trusting my GPS on which way to walk. It's amazing how quickly you can get turned around the woods and have a piece of technology there. You should trust it. But I'm a Boy Scout. I always keep a flint in my backpack whenever I'm walking out in the woods, because you never know. And that's got a little compass on it. And those always work.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when I was a teenager hunting blacktail in Washington with my dad, I was out on my lonesome, and I came out of the timber at the end of the night on a road that I knew, and I was pretty sure I knew it well. And I did not believe, I thought my compass was lying to me.
Yep.
So I went in the direction that I knew I needed to go. And it cost me miles, Nick, before I realized that I'd made a grave mistake in it. And I returned to camp very late because I added miles onto my trek home.
Yeah. And I will say electronics have gotten significantly better, over the last 10, 15 years. And you can generally always trust them this day and age. And they generally work well, even in the backcountry, but nothing beats a compass. It will point the right way every time.
It will. Yep. You're absolutely right. That's your basic backcountry loadout.
Yeah, I think that's how we're gonna live. We've covered. I think now we can talk about how we're gonna work.
Let's talk turkey for just a little bit, because we have more turkey episodes coming. When I'm backcountry hunting in general, I have a kill kit. So it has some rubber gloves in it. It has some hand wipes in it. And and then it also has Ziploc bags. My mother and father love deer liver and deer heart. I'm not a fan. They are. So I always have organ bags with me so that I can pack out for them. That's my actual kill kit. I carry another Ziploc bag, Nick, that has my license, my tags. It has zip ties, paracord, a pin, so that I can, if it's a type of tag that I have to fill out, or I can write notes or whatever I want. And I have my skinning field dressing knife and extra blades in there. And I use a disposable blade knife for field dressing out whether it's a morning trip, a day trip, or a backcountry trip. That's just my preference. I don't carry face paint anymore. I carry a champagne cork and a lighter, and I carry 2 types of lighters. I carry your standard Bic lighter, and then I carry a butane lighter. And my butane lighter happens to have a small compass on it. Lighters are important, one, because I burn the cork and then I rub the burnt cork on my face. It doesn't completely cover my face like face paint does, but it puts a nice charcoal ash tint to my skin, and you can press hard and get distinctive lines, or you can just, put a light dusting on. But it washes off really, really easy, and it doesn't stink. It doesn't get nasty. It doesn't give you that tight, caked on, crinkly feeling that you get from face paint. And at the end of the day, you can take a wet wipe or go over to the creek, and you can splash water on your face and you can rub most of that ash off. Whereas face paint, that stuff is going to be on you until you come out of the woods. And that stuff drives me nuts. So I do the burnt cork method now. I'm a big fan of lighters. Last September, I will say, after I think it was 7 years of use on my Jetboil, my igniter failed me on the backcountry trip. A lighter allowed me to continue to use my Jetboil. If I hadn't had a lighter, or if HP hadn't had a lighter with him, I would have been relying on his stove, because the igniter went out on my Jetboil. But again, Jetboil, that stove was 7 years old and had so much use out of it. So I have no complaints about the Jetboil. So that's some additional items. I always carry some type of a wet wipe with me. I'm a big fan of Dude Wipes. They have a shower wipe that's unscented. It's a heavy duty, larger wipe that I use for some of the areas that gather an abundant amount of normal flora. So they can keep you feeling and smelling fairly good. And then I always carry a first aid kit, Nick. And I've gone the route from a simple Band-Aid to a complete blowout kit, like a military style blowout kit. And now I have my kit down to a small Ziploc bag, and then I have a tourniquet. I carry some bandages, I carry some tape, I carry quick clot. And when I say bandages, I'm talking about gauze bandage, and then I have like an elastic bandage. I carry a disposable skin stapler. So that pretty much covers me from any type of minor injury that I might have to something severe. Now, on this turkey hunt, unless one of us falls and impales ourselves on a stick, or heaven forbid, we have a negligent discharge and somebody takes a shotgun shell to a part of the body, I carry the quick clot and the skin stapler for archery hunting and when I'm field dressing big game, because you're handling razor sharp knives. But I mean, we could say the same thing about a turkey. If one of us, we lay ourselves open with a knife when we're processing a turkey, I have everything that we need to deal with that emergency. And again, a lot of people, there's a lot of controversy out there about tourniquets and how to use them. And I will tell folks, I am a tourniquet survivor myself, and it was a makeshift tourniquet. And if it hadn't been for that, I would have bled out in the field before the medics got to me. It's a motorcycle accident. We were out in a very rural area. If we had not been able to stop the blood flow from my femoral artery with a belt style tourniquet, I would have bled out before the medics got there. You never know what's going to happen. And I would much rather put a tourniquet on somebody and cut the blood loss off and have them have some type of compartmentalization syndrome and lose a limb than bleed out because somebody was afraid to put a tourniquet on me. That's the world according to Aaron Ritter. There's some controversy out there. You believe in what you want to believe, but I encourage anybody that's going to spend time in the backcountry to, if you're not currently using or carrying a tourniquet, that you do some research on it. You pick an easy and simple to use tourniquet and you put it in your pack, and you have a decent understanding of how that works and how to apply it and manage it, because you will save your own life or somebody else's life with that one little simple piece of gear.
And just having a basic understanding of how it works, I think almost anyone should. I had a friend fall out of a hot tub and put a piece of glass through his inner thigh, and I had to tie one night. It was a pair of jeans, but let the ambulance get to the house, and that was the important thing. So
exactly. That's my point, Nick.
Yeah,
yep.
it can be almost anything, but getting a good kit. And the first aid was something that I mentioned to you before. I want to go through your kit because we've done the Walmart thing. We've done the Walmart thing plus some. A lot of family members in the medical field, so we've added to it a little bit. But I want to go through your kit and see exactly what you have, and I'll definitely be modifying what we bring when we're out dirt biking and when I'm out hunting myself in the backcountry.
Oh, yeah, mine's, you can see it sitting in front of you. It's simple.
Yep.
Super simple, but it will save your life. Turkey calls. You can't go turkey hunting without a turkey call and turkey decoys. So with me, I'll have multiple diaphragms. I will have one box call. I will have 2 pot calls, and I have a gobbler. And then, I have a crow call, and I have a conditioning stick, and then I'll carry 3 or 4 different strikers. My box call, not that I want to go through every single call that I'm taking into the backwoods. My dad won a turkey call in a contest. It was a hunting contest out in the Pacific Northwest. This is a small, discreet, handmade box call. And it looks like the gentleman's name is Bill Boblet or Bobbitt. And I probably should have called and asked my dad about this before we started ripping this podcast, Nick. But this is call number 217 by Bill. And my dad sent this to me, I don't know, probably 5 years ago. And I have had so much fun with this little call. All turkeys are different. Breeds of turkey are different. I have found that the Easterns out here in Virginia and Maryland react really, really well to this little wooden box call that I have. So that's the box call that I'm going to take. I have one slate call and one slate and one glass pot call, and then multiple different strikers. So that's what we have there for the turkey calls. And we are going to take some decoys. I ordered inflatable Tom in full strut, and I'm going to trim the beard down to give him more of an adolescent look for a more mature bird. And then we're going to take the 3 of the lightweight collapsible HS strut. They sell a decoy kit. It comes with a Jake and 2 hens. So we're going to pack in 4 different call decoys. Again, they're lightweight and they collapse. They're compactable. And they're not as high quality as some of the very realistic looking high-end decoys that are out there. But I have 2 avions. There's no way that I'm packing in 2 avions on this packing trip. I'm just not doing it. But I do want to hunt over decoys with you. So that's what we're going to do with that. The last thing that I'm going to touch on is personal protection. Growing up in the Pacific Northwest, hunting the Cascades and being around black bears my entire life, I never worried about black bears. I never carried a sidearm. Now, granted, I did most of my hunting with a modern firearm. But even as I transitioned into bow hunting, back in that point in time in Washington State, it was illegal to carry any type of firearm during archery season, period. Things have changed across the country, across the nation now, game department wise, as far as being able to carry some type of a handgun or bear protection when you're hunting outside of modern firearms. And during turkey season in the state of Virginia, unless I've read the game laws incorrectly, we can carry handguns. My favorite gun of choice is a 357 Magnum, and I carry it's a Taurus, the Poly Protector. It's a snub-nosed polymer frame 357 Magnum. It's a 5-shot, and I carry that in a Venandy holster. Venandy is a small holster company I think they're out of Utah, or that might be New Mexico or Arizona. They're out in that direction, and they've designed a custom handgun holster that can be used with your bino harness. And there's a lot of different bino harnesses that incorporate holsters on the market right now. Some are mounted underneath, some have MOLLE attachments, so you can attach a holster to it. Mine, the straps to my harness run through the legs of my holster, and it keeps the gun in between my chest and my binocular chest rig. So it's right at chest level. It's easy access. It's not dangling down below. When I bend over to work with my water filtration system or to pick something up off the ground or anything else that I'm doing, my handgun isn't digging into my belly or pinching me between my the gun and my belt or anything like that. It's tucked in right behind my chest rig, and I just absolutely love it. So if you're not familiar with the Venandy holsters, I would check out Venandy on the internet, and they can make a holster that's going to work really well with your bino harness. I think that's really about all I have for this loadout podcast. This turned out to be a great conversation, and a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but we covered a lot of material.
We did. And I'm definitely excited to get the bags loaded up here in a couple weeks and wander away from that trailhead. We'll be doing some more work over the next couple weeks, doing as much e-scouting as we can. I know I'll be poking your brain a whole lot more in the next couple weeks on the loadout and getting the bags set up the most optimal way possible. I'm sure I'll pack it and unpack it about 37 times between then and now to figure it out for myself, but excited to get into this adventure. It's going to be a blast, backcountry style first turkey hunt. I don't think you'd ask for a better way to start your turkey career. So
no, I think you're onto something here. We didn't talk about what we're shooting turkeys with. I think that could be a whole nother discussion. I'm carrying a 20 gauge. I shifted to a 20 gauge last year. Nick, I know you're carrying a 12 gauge.
Yep.
You're going to shoot the Winchester XRs or the Longbeard XRs, and I'm shooting a TSS. They're hand loads made by Aaron Satterfield, Sadie's Fatties. Again, that's a whole nother discussion, but this is not an archery turkey trip. This backcountry trip is with the shotties. So one last thing I want to throw out there again is this episode was sponsored by Sawyer Products. Their water filtration system, the Sawyer Squeeze specifically. And again, this is a podcast project, this backcountry turkey hunt. And then we're going to have multiple episodes involved with this, at least 3 that we know of right now. At some point between now and the last episode, we will have information and provide details on how our listeners are able to put their name in a hat for a gifted Sawyer Squeeze from Sawyer and Sprocket and Chubbs. Nick, I think that's it.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. It's been a great conversation. Thank you again to Sawyer Squeeze for sponsoring this episode.
And Chubbs, we really missed you today.
I was looking forward to meeting Chubbs.
You've never met Chubbs.
I have not met Chubbs. I take a little bit after him myself, but yeah, hopefully here. I'm sure one of the conversations coming up between this trip and getting ready for the fall one, I'm sure I'll have a good long conversation with him. So
yeah, I missed his input this morning, especially because Chubbs has some backcountry experience as well. So Chubbs, you are missed.
How impressive was that? A solid episode detailing what Sprocket and Nick will be taking on their backcountry turkey hunt. I don't know about you all, but I can't wait to hear the results from that adventure. And now I think it's time for a giveaway. Sawyer Products has graciously sent us a Sawyer Squeeze and a bottle of permethrin to share with one of you lucky Sprocket and Chubbs listeners. Want a chance at winning this combo? All you have to do is subscribe to our Sprocket and Chubbs YouTube channel, find this specific episode, episode 6, and leave a comment saying, "I want a Sawyer Squeeze." It's that easy. We'll announce the winner in a couple weeks after Sprocket and Nick report back from their turkey hunt. Now, Sprocket and Chubbs could use your help. Please leave us a review on the platform where you listen. Also, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for notifications on when we launch each new episode or tailgate talk. More than anything, thank you all for your continued support.